You're listening to Just a Dude podcast with your host, Nathan. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's roll. Welcome back to Just a Dude podcast, the podcast that elevates normal, everyday voices. Today, we've got Max, the mastermind behind Moonshine, a wild series about witches, werewolves, and a kid named Sam growing up in the early 1900s America. Dude's got a knack for blending magic and grit. We're diving into Sam's journey, Max's creative process, and maybe some werewolf secrets. So stick around, you won't want to miss this one. Max, dude, tell us who you are and what sparked this Moonshine series.
Sure. Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Nathan. First of all, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
We had some fun scheduling stuff to make it happen, but I'm glad we made it happen. It's great. So what sparked Moonshine? Good story, I find inspiring in many, many ways. So good story can come in many forms. It can come in the form of a song. It can come in the form of movies, of course. That's where we enjoy most of our stories these days. Books are still a thing.
Yep.
And I myself had been participating in story for a long time because I've been in the acting business for a long, long time. A lot of commercials out here in LA. I've been on stage in Vegas and gone to Lear in Vegas, rowing boats and singing songs and like the whole thing. So it was in DC for a little while. I've run the gamut, but it found some pretty good success out here in Los Angeles doing commercials, and actually had a pretty good run on a soap opera for a while. I got to be the bad guy in The Young and the Restless for about 60 episodes. We could talk about that it was crazy. But all that, not to toot my own horn or anything, but all that just to say that story is forever present, and the telling of stories has been forever present in my life. And it's to some extent present in all our lives, whether we realize it or not. You know, we're telling ourselves stories about what my boss did to me, or how wonderful my wife is, or isn't my kid funny, or, you know, there's story all over the place. And story speaks to us in many different ways. And during COVID, I actually took a hit in the acting world, as you can imagine, all that.
Yeah, just like everybody did, right?
Yeah, everybody
took it
did.
in the acting world too.
Sure did. Imagine that. But yeah, so through that, just being a creative, if you will, I just couldn't sit still. And I have always, had, like, I imagine some people must, have any given day, I have 3 or 4 ideas for movies. It's like, oh, that'd be a cool movie, or it'd be a cool skit, or be a cool that. And this particular idea kind of wouldn't leave me alone. And that's kind of how Stephen King talks about his ideas. Someone asked him once if he writes down his ideas, does he have a journal? And he said, no. He said, the good ideas won't leave you alone. He said, they'll just keep coming back. And this is one that has kept coming back. So as COVID started, I was like, you know what, let me see if I can give this a go. And I did a challenge with a website called NaNoWriMo, which is National November Writers Month, I think is what it's called. You're supposed to write a certain amount a day, and they have little badges and goals. They kind of gamify it a little bit. So I came out with 100,000 words or something from that, and then started paring that down, because a lot of that, when you're just trying to make a goal for writing words per day, sometimes it isn't going to make it in the story, but you made your word count. There's some funny quips about that where you look back over what you wrote and you're like, what? I don't get what.
Yeah, what was I doing here, right?
Oh,
Max.
my God. Some of it is like, he picked up the glass with his hand. You're like, how the hell else is he going to pick up the glass? Like, why are you, like, what are you doing?
You're like, obviously that was word count, right? That's
right.
What we
exactly.
were going for.
Exactly. I got 4 extra words by doing that. So this is a very, very long-winded way of saying that, Moonshine takes place in the North Woods. It has lumbering, is kind of the main focus of that. And I grew up in the middle of Maine, and when I was there, it was a lumber town. We had a lumberman's museum. We had a log driver's cookout in the winter on a frozen lake up at Pleasant Lake in Island Falls. So there's something about that, I grew up in a time where we went to school super early in August, but then in September, literally the whole town got 2 weeks off for potato harvest. So it was still still that kind of a thing,
Yep.
So just looking back, I'm like, what was great about being a kid? What was great about growing up there without technology, without, we worried about our snowmobiles more than we worried about anything else. So I set this back in the 1980s to take the tech out of it, and decided, what if we could make it a little magical and a little fun and a little, woodsy, if you will, and at the same time whimsical. And then Moonshine kind of came out of that. is that long enough winded answer for
No,
you?
no,
My
it's
God.
great because I think it goes right into the next thing because I wanted to kind of, talk about the character that you built and essentially, let's make sure I make sure this is right. Well, he's a
Yes.
10-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
Sam, and he's
Yeah.
dealing with loss and he's following a stranger to a magical place. So
Yeah.
can you kind of give us, without giving away the book, obviously, but can you
Sure,
kind of
sure,
give us a
sure.
little information about Sam and maybe what he's going to go through or what we
Sure.
could expect?
Absolutely. So, um, it's a coming of age story, and there's for Sam, and he has a normal life in the South. He's a little African American boy, and he has like a normal life in 1920, which says something about what is normal for him.
Right.
And, it does say something there. And through a series of events, tragedy unfolds, and he basically can't stay there anymore. He has a huge loss. Just when that happens, John, another character, shows up to kind of say, actually, you're supposed to come north with me. And he's a little confused at first, but there's this great scene where this big tragedy has happened and John is staring there with him. And he just takes a minute and Sam turns to him and he says, so north? And John's like, yeah. And he just starts walking. And, one of my friends was talking about how like, wow, there's really no emotional processing or da-da-da. But then he was very relieved to find out that happens later in the book, because I think we all have experienced something like that. I don't want to say traumatic in our lives. Some of us are fortunate enough to not have acute trauma in our lives, but we've all had an experience in our lives where I just have to move. I just have to do something. I can't sit here anymore, So I wanted to reflect that type of thing where, he even says moving better always felt better than sitting still. So
Yeah.
he ends up heading north. And as he does, he doesn't realize it immediately. But on the way, kind of these little strange magical things start happening. And then he arrives to this town called Forge in New York State in the middle of nowhere, literally lumber country. He has a rite of passage, if you will, a come to Jesus moment. And that's when the magic really kind of enters the story. And right as it does, we say, and that's it. And we kind of leave to kind of go on to the next book. But it rises out of tragedy like a lot of change does. And it's about his journey and becoming a man without his father, if you will, and still being, especially because it's Just a Dude podcast, I can speak to that a little bit more. It's very much about what would happen to a kid if he had this loss. And then what if he was scooped up by a group who knew how to bring him through this whole thing in a magical and a fun way, and where it's not like on the head, like we're telling you how this should be, but what does the positive masculine look like in 1920 in the most positive way, and what lessons can we learn from that?
Yeah. So what was it, just the technology part, or what made you want to set it in, the early 1900s?
Sure. Yeah, technology has a lot to do with it. As a writer, any good movie or anything that you watch, like the fact that we all have phones now
Yeah, right.
solves so many problems and so many things that in some ways it's almost too easy, or like, wait, I need some more drama. Why wouldn't they just call? Do they have a cell phone? You're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't want it to be that. As well as there's something to be said where I feel like the 1920s was, this is coming in the next couple books, but the technology was just becoming a thing at that time. The steam engine was just coming online. The Model T was just coming online.
Yeah, the industrial age was really coming
Radio
to fruition.
was just starting up. I think these radios in World War I, so they had that, but it was just the beginning of work being replaced by machines. So I also like the idea, as the story moves forward a little bit, that tech, because this is book one of probably like four, and by the end of the fourth book, kind of the crux at the end, it doesn't really give anything away, but the crux at the end is, okay, they've gone through all this, but now technology has moved forward, especially if you think of lumbering, right? Now they have steam engines, now they have power saws, now they have, and these men who have been super useful, who have been totally fine with being out in the wild and being in the middle of nowhere, now aren't needed. So what do you do now,
Right.
And that totally parallels what's happening now with AI and the rest of it. I don't have to make much of a jump.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's literally, what I just came from was I was in a position that, I hate to say it, but AI is kind of taken over, so I wasn't as needed as much anymore, so when they go to save money, where are they going to cut? Where the list, least amount of need is. But, you know, it's still that human touch is still what's missing from the AI today, you know?
It is. And it's interesting too, because like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I love to be helpful. I think that, you know,
Hmm.
men like to feel needed. And if all of a sudden you don't feel needed anymore, you're kind of, wait,
Yeah,
what? Like I spent how many
exactly.
years?
You just sit there and it's like, you know, like one of the things for me too is like, wait a second, now here I am in my mid 40s and I'm going to start over again.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. But, you know, and going back to Sam and thinking about that, you know, going through this magical adventure, right, that he's going
Hmm.
through, and then having this technology come up on top of that, like you said, where you're taking men that were
Yeah.
used to working in the fields or, you know, using
Yeah.
hand saws to cut down trees and, you
Yeah.
know, to do the milling and lumbering and all that. And now all of a sudden, hey, there's machines for that. So now, exactly like you said, what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What do we do? The interesting thing for me, you know, being in the Hollywood scene, just to piggyback on your thing with AI a little bit, is that for me, it's not like they used AI to make this movie, and now the movie costs $1.99 instead of $27. You know, it's like, wait,
Yep.
the movie still costs $30. So where'd all that money go? Now it's going into one guy's pocket instead of
Yep.
going into 200 people's
Multiple.
pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, is that, I don't know, that's better. I think that's the thing that we're going to actually have to start coming to as a society now, is to make decisions about what's, and not that it has to be good for everybody,
Yeah.
but wait a second, like how can we, support the most people? It's still being, I mean, I get we live in capitalism and we are here to
Yeah.
make money
Hmm.
and we got to
Yeah.
keep the lights on.
We want to boost that profit, right?
Yeah, we do. I get it. I get what that is, but my brother's a great example. He's an eye doctor. He's got a couple practices and he's very good to his employees and he pays them well, but he still at the same time he sponsored the little butterfly habitat that they have at the local school. You know, like that's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff we should be doing.
Exactly.
He's not spending it on a yacht, you know?
You're right. Yeah. Doesn't have multiple mansions
No.
throughout the
No.
country, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, you're absolutely right. And, you know, one of the things that I worry about too as we go through AI is not only taking away some of these jobs that people do today, like you talked about, you know, back in the 20s, taking away jobs because machines do it. But, you know,
Yeah.
same thing. What, you know, is this going to start, you know, for authors, right? Can people just go in there and say, hey, here's the premise of my story, write the book,
Yeah.
right?
It's a big thing. There was when I wrote my book, we weren't quite there. I started writing in 20, and it's crazy to think that like, oh yeah, it wasn't that big deal 5 years ago,
Yeah.
but it wasn't, you know.
No, it wasn't.
But now you can pretty much do that. You know, you can pretty much go on Chat GPT and one of the first things I did is like, well, write me a kid's book. So I kind of gave like a dinosaur is scared of the water, go, something like that. And it gave me, I was like, that sounds like a kid's book. Like, holy moly.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a second, you're taking jobs away. You're taking away our
Yeah.
creativity now too.
Yeah. It's just, and on the one hand, it's amazing and it's holy moly, And on the other hand, what makes us human? Maybe it is copying others. And I mean, we all do that. We all copy others before we have our own legs. I mean, you didn't invent a hammer on your own. You learned that from
No.
someone.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
learned a
we're all. I mean,
program from.
in most cases, right? We're always stealing from somebody. I don't want
Yeah.
to say stealing, borrowing, right?
Yeah.
Acquiring
We're
different
learning.
ideas and things.
Yeah, we're learning. That's what it is. It's literally, the Miles Davis listened to, who did he listen to copy forever before he had his own voice? It's the same kind of idea. So it's, and the other thing about AI that I think is very interesting is that anyone you talk to about it, everybody, I have yet to meet someone that when you're talking seriously about it, they're not like, yeah, it's amazing, but, usually,
You're worried.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Usually someone's like,
Yes.
oh no, it's great. No, it sucks. But almost everyone is like, yeah, no. Ugh.
Yeah, even me working, like we were literally building AI systems, and even myself working in AI, I'm like, if we don't put up some guardrails to stop it from going off the rails, right? It could do whatever it wants. I mean, they've already, I think I heard a stat the other day that it's already written twice as much as any combined human writing has done in just the short time it's been here. So it's already doubled what we've written in our entire human history by writing whatever it writes out. And that's crazy.
Yeah. And then how do you sort through it all? That's part of the thing for me. That's going to be something in the future. Go ahead.
And not only that, but what it feeds off of everything that's publicly available. So if there's
Mm,
bad information out there, you could get that bad information back.
sure
You
could.
know,
You sure could.
so
That's
it's
gonna be
just a
interesting.
slippery slope. I mean, it does amazing things, but on the other hand, you can see where it could just go haywire.
Not even going haywire, just be so good that you're, is that a real person? Is that a real, like, holy
Exactly.
moly, like, I
I
don't
mean, how
even
many times do
know.
you do that now? Like, I
Ugh.
got a telemarketer call the other day and it was an AI. It said it was an AI agent. And I was like, had it not said that, I would have never known.
Yep. So convincing now. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, I heard about that voice one. We're getting totally on AI track here, but
No,
I
that's
heard
all right.
about the one of the guys who did the first voice kind of thing. The reason he did it is because he had all these voicemails from his dad and he wanted to talk to his dad again. His dad had passed away. So he loaded
Yeah.
all these all this stuff into the AI and it came back and it sounded like his dad. And on one hand, you're like, that is amazing and powerful and wonderful and a way to help with closure or a way to, like, it's romantic in a certain wonderful way.
Sure.
And then on the other hand, you're like, and all you need is 5 voicemails from, you know, my dad's granddaughter, and he thinks she's stranded somewhere and sends somebody $1,000.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
can
You're like, oh my
immediately
goodness, a
see.
kidnap. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So it really calls into question morality, ethics, a bunch of stuff of, just because we can, does it mean that we should? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, if you think about any type of major technology throughout
Mm,
history, right? When we think
mm,
of nuclear power, right?
yeah.
It can be used for great things,
Yeah.
but it can also be
Or,
extremely devastating.
yep.
So,
Yeah.
and that's always the bad thing, right? Is we always have good intentions when we invent things, but it's like once that bad actor gets involved, then they take it another way.
It only
But
takes one jackass. It just takes
yeah,
one
and you know
jackass.
what? It's funny. I want to bring this back to the book because it's kind of
Sure.
like if you think about it, we're talking about AI, but this is kind of what they were going through in the 20s with the Industrial
Yeah.
Revolution and everything, right? Because they're probably thinking the same thing. We're not going to have jobs. These machines are going to take all of our things,
Yeah,
And
if you read between the lines in this, one of the main characters, John, um, might as well give it away or not give it away, but he's John Henry, who I don't know if you remember from the school times. He fought the steam engine or whatever. Which he technically would have been dead, but he has a long life because it's magic and fantasy and whatever. But that's there's even some comments in there where, like, he doesn't like motor cars, he doesn't like this, he doesn't, and you're like, that's just interesting. And then when you figure it out, you're like, because he had to beat one at some point. You know,
yeah,
which, once again, I'm not defending, probably the work conditions of the railroad workers. I don't want to sound like I'm
exactly.
defending that at all. But at the
Yeah,
same time, what used to take, I don't know, 100 guys, a year, took
yeah,
20 guys 6 months. And
exactly.
that's better,
Yeah.
is it?
And that's the thing. It's like when do you find that balance?
Mm,
In real life, and we're talking real life now about the book now. But
yeah.
how do we, like with this AI generation, and even back then, how do you find the balance to make sure it doesn't go too far to where
Yeah.
we're all sitting here going, I don't have a job. AI's doing everything.
Part of that too, I joke with myself that I like to think of myself as a smart person, but I'm for sure not, like, wicked smart, like,
Yeah,
and if we're all on a bell curve, like, those of us who aren't doctors, we got to do something or we're just going to go find trouble,
exactly.
So, like, I get that you can
Or
do my
trouble will
job.
find us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, it'll just doesn't take long, trust me. So yeah, speaking of, like, changing things, that's why I started writing the book, is because, for 3-4 years, it was so nothing in the acting world. And some of that might be that I got more gray in my hair now, and that's just a natural consequence of how, the actor's journey goes. But yeah, it's also that, like you said, do I have to reinvent myself at, coming up on 50? Like, I guess I do. I guess I have to keep trucking here. I guess I have to shift or pivot, or depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, and you know what? But that's amazing that you could do that, and that you still tapped into your creative market, right? You're
Mm,
telling those stories, and now
yep,
but now you're writing your own story that's
yeah.
entertaining. It's got basically a way of life, right? He's
Mhm.
coming to be a man, right? Like you said,
Yeah,
he's learning to be a man without his dad, which what
yeah,
is unfortunate that today there's so many people that have to do that, right?
yeah,
So I'm assuming a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this book.
yeah. That's the idea too, is that, we love just in storytelling terms, we love a hero who's had tragedy. We love someone who has to work against something, and all too often the reason we love that is because we or someone we know has experienced that.
We relate to it, right? And
How we
so we
relate to
feel
it.
close to home to it. We can
Yeah.
totally relate to that character. We might see a part of ourselves in it even.
Yeah, totally. So that was the idea with that, is that, Harry Potter's under the stairs. His parents died. Every Disney thing, the parents, even Finding Nemo, the mom dies immediately.
Always
it's like,
orphans. What's going on with Disney, right?
yeah, what's interesting about that is that I was reading this and it was really interesting that the orphan thing of losing your parents is that there's something that it cues in us about what will society do with someone who doesn't have their parents, number one. So it calls on us as a society, and it has this deeper meaning to be who are we as a society? How do we treat this orphan? So we love to kind of examine that. And the other one is that often happens in story because you release the parent's karma. Oftentimes, when with our own children, we expect things of them because we didn't accomplish them. I was poor, so you're going to be rich. Or I was, I didn't make the football team, so you're going to. Or I didn't, we have this kind of plan. And
Exactly.
what that does is it releases all that from the kid so they can be their own hero and not follow in someone else's footsteps in that way. So it was an interesting...
It's funny that you make that correlation, because I don't know if I know we're, probably close to the same age, but, growing up for me, I was always hammered by my parents to say, you've got to go to college, right? That was the thing back in the day, our age group, right? You go to college, you write your ticket. Then by the time we got done with college, there was no ticket to be written. But anyway,
Anybody?
It's like, hey, I got this ticket and all these loans.
Right. So,
but it is so funny, because for the longest time, that was the way, right? If you went to college, you could write your way, but then we had a whole generation that everybody went to college. So now everybody's college educated. So now what do? You got to make a name for yourself, and obviously, like, for yourself, like getting into acting, how did that happen for you?
It's funny. My mom's a dance teacher, so I grew up on stage, and it was just one of those things that, when you start something when you're tiny and you grow up with it, I've never hesitated about being
nature,
on stage.
Right?
Yeah, and I was never a great dancer. I was a good dancer in a group, but I was never like a soloist. But, my wife makes the joke that she says, Max, not everyone sees a stage and wants to get on it. Most people just want to sit and watch. And I'm like, what? Why not? It doesn't even make sense to me. Like, if there's a stage, you got to be on it, right? So, I have that gift of, I still get nervous and the rest of it, but you hand me a microphone, I'll be like, all right, how many minutes you need me to go? Like, I'll make it up.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So the performing thing was just kind of always there, to the point where in college, I started it as a chemical engineering major and ended up second semester getting a D in chemistry, but doing 6 shows at the college. So I was like, okay, I guess I should lean into this. And I still love science. I still am kind of a nerd for stuff. My kids always ask me, like, how do you know all this stuff, Dad? It's like, well, I still like to know why the sky is blue and what meteors are. And I love Neil deGrasse Tyson and I love all that side of it. But my gifts tend to be in this weird performance / look at me kind of.
But that's all right. It's worked out for you so far, though, right, Max?
So far, so good. We're,
been pretty good.
Yeah. We'll see with the book how it all shakes out. But
yeah,
the book is more of a backstage thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely something different, not in your normal wheelhouse, right? For you.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you when you came up with Moonshine? How long did it take you to process it? I know you started with the challenge, right?
Sure,
and then that probably ballooned into it. But how long did it take you for the writing process?
The idea was spun in my head for a long time, but the actual once, hands to keyboard, pen to paper kind of thing, once that started, 2 years, probably year and a half. It was November. Yeah, probably a year and a half.
Gotcha.
Year and a half to 2 years. And that was a lot of it was writing on my own. I'm very, very fortunate in that every night I fall asleep next to my wife, who is a educator. She got her degree in English and then she got her master's in education from Stanford. So I'm very fortunate that I literally sleep next to my editor every night.
Right.
So once I got it to a point where I didn't feel like it was embarrassing, my wife and I would sit down for a couple hours almost every day, And she would remind me that I still should be embarrassed and work through stuff. So she really helped give the book a lot of depth because she taught everything from Shakespeare to Catcher in the Rye and all those things. She's very used to digging in and saying, what did the author really mean? And, the kids are always saying, oh, did he really
finding
mean that?
the meaning, right?
Yeah. And, as a student, you're always, did he really mean that? No, he didn't. How do you even know?
Yeah.
So we very much on purpose throughout the story, very much on purpose, have deep meaning or double meaning into things where we look forward to writing the teacher's guide to teaching this book to say, no, this is what the author meant. No, this is what it means.
Yeah.
And that's why this metaphor is here. Yeah. Like a great example of my wife kind of schooling me is in the second chapter, there's the first spell that a character named Letha casts. She's a very, very, very old witch, and she's calling in some really powerful magic to make this transfer of power that's going to happen in the book. And I had written some fun things that kind of rhyme. They were a little bit like a limerick, a little bit, and I thought they were cute and fun. And then I sat down with my wife, Alice, and she said, these are fun, but if you want this to like mean something and have some undertow, like these should feel timeless. Like this should feel not like it's a quick quip. It should feel like this is really calling something in. And that's where it came. The first 4 lines of the first spell I still love. It's, since Gilgamesh your song was sung, from silver moon to silver tongue, here a blade to cut the skin. From these words, the spell begins. So, just thinking.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's great, right? And even if you don't know what Gilgamesh is, that's an old story. You heard it in grade school or something. It's like, okay, Gilgamesh, well, that's old.
Yeah, it takes you back in your mind, right?
Yeah,
you're like, wow, I've heard that before.
That's ancient. No, even if you don't know the details, you're like, I know that's old, by Silver Moon and Silver Tongue, you're like, Silver Moon, there's a moon on the cover and it's moonshine. Silver Tongue, what's this silver stuff? Oh, wait, is there a magic? Is there werewolves coming? Like, what's going on? Here a blade to cut the skin. You're like, wait, this guy's on his deathbed. Is she going to kill him? Like, what's happening? And then from these words, a spell begins. You're like, oh, shit, here it comes,
Here it comes. Now it's.
Yeah, here it comes. Yeah, it's on. And then, of course, it goes on from there. There's some wonderful foreshadowing in those spells that really doesn't pay off until much later in the book. If you're not paying attention, it's a really cool spell. If you're really paying attention, when you get to the end, you're like, wait, she said that on page 6. Like, oh my God.
Nice recall. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good example of going deeper into the writing very much on purpose and having a good editor who helps you to do that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with reading fluff. Like, I'm okay with you.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have some books that we like to just escape into, right? That's just fluff, fun to read, right? Gets us through, gets us out of our minds. But, one of the things that this obviously had to be hard for you, though, to take a loss to a transformation, especially for a 10-year-old, right? That's what we're talking about here. How did you, or even you and your wife, balance that emotional depth with the adventure part of it?
Well, it's interesting you say that because when the tragedy happens to him, there's chapter 13, when we literally, before he knows it's happening, right? We kind of cut away for a second and we see the tragedy happen, and then he discovers it later, if you will. Not to give anything away. Spoiler alert, whatever.
No spoilers, right?
No spoiler. Not yet. I mean, tragedy. Okay. I wrote the chapter where the actual tragedy happens, and it's quick. It's like 5 pages maybe. And when I finished writing it, I was like, ugh, like this is heavy. Like if there was a chapter that would bring it from young adult to like adult, that would be the chapter. And part
that was
of
like
it,
the transition chapter that really hit it home, right? You're like,
just,
not a kid anymore.
We're kind of having this fun little thing. This is okay, I can see this. And you're like, whoa, what happened? And I kind of wanted it to just land like that all of a sudden, because once again, especially back then, tragedy would fall on people before there was penicillin and the rest of it. Like tragedy was a
totally different thing than what tragedy is today, right?
Yeah, like everyone. I don't want to generalize, but in my parents' generation, everyone had a friend that passed at some point because of an accident or this or that. You can ask kids nowadays, and that just doesn't happen to them, as much, for good reason. I'm not saying I'm not saying it should happen,
right?
But I wanted the reader to have that sudden feeling of like, wait, what? wait a second, what's happening? Oh my God, wait. And then how we deal with that happens right after. So it was a challenge to write that, but I wanted to give that feeling of sudden tragedy and almost impersonal, where
Hmm.
it lands in your lap and you're like, what do I do with this? And you have to do something with it. Are you going to keep moving? Are you going to let it define the rest of your life? How are you going to deal with that? And luckily he kind of has help along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a tricky thing to be, do I write some fluff? Do I have it have depth? Can I do a little bit of both? Can I make you have a little fun and then smack you down?
Smack you right in the face with it.
I'd
Yeah.
be like, what? This is not what you said, it was going to happen. But like I said, I think it's necessary. I think that there's a lot of, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of people have tragedy in their lives, and we relate to that. And even if it's not overwhelming tragedy, the death of someone or anything else. I mean, when you're 4, your goldfish dies, and that's a tragedy. So we can all relate somehow to it. So yeah, that was the challenge, is to make it have depth, have meaning, and depth for most of us means some degree of discomfort or pain that you've had to move through. I mean, that's what we love about our heroes. That's why we love Wolverine or
Yeah.
Logan, is because he's faulty. He
Exactly.
has pain that he moves through, especially as just a dude, right? Like, we love those
Hmm.
guys who are,
Yep.
whiskey drinking and da-da-da. It's like, I guess I got to go save the girl now. Let's go save the girl, still does the right thing. We love that. Honorable scoundrel is the term that we use for that.
Yeah, exactly. The honorable scout. Yeah, scoundrel. I love that. Because, yeah, you're right. You're like, oh, I don't want to call anti-hero, but,
Yeah,
it's a hero that's not your typical hero,
correct. Yeah,
Got a little bit of a dark past there.
yeah, exactly. And that's all these guys who are lumberjacks that Sam is going to get to know. They all have a dark past, but they've come through it for the most part, and now they feel like they can hand some knowledge along the way. Which, once again, as men, I think we can all. I for sure have a list of things that I'm not proud of.
Yep. Yeah, you and me both.
So I think that most of us can relate to that too, where everyone's going to make their own mistakes, but at least try not to make the ones I made.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I tell, especially as we get older in life, we're definitely more likely to see other people's mistakes and learn from them than we were when we were younger.
Please, dear God. Yes, please, dear God. Can I learn from someone else's mistakes? I've made enough of my own.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, for you though, with building this character and stuff, how did you even start writing something this wild? Where you take, you're going historical, you're putting some magic in there, you're doing an adventure, a come to life.
Yeah.
How did this, can you walk us through like what your process was for this?
Sure. I had the idea of the world first, of this world where there's, once again, old, like 1900s, where men were men, where they worked with their hands and they went out and did things every day. It reminds me of Garrison Keillor. You know who that is? He used to do a radio show, and his fictional town was Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, the men are good looking, and all the children are above average, So a little bit of a nod to that, to some classic kind of Americana, if you will. And so I had the idea for the world kind of before anything else. And even before there was magic in it, I had this idea for like this lumberjacks up north, and happens about 1910 or so. And they, like, maybe they're outlaws, and maybe they, get tangled up in prohibition somehow. And so there's kind of this world that was kind of spinning.
Yeah.
And then, thanks to, number one, an improv teacher that I had for a while, and my wife, I was like, well, why not? What, can you make it magical? Would that be fun? Yeah. Why write in reality? Like, let's have a little bit of fun with it. So then the werewolf idea, came up, which is, these lumberjacks are possibly werewolves, giving it away. Right? But also that, my wife, of course, in her wonderful way, was like, what about the women? So I'm like, okay, well, werewolves and witches, that's not a stretch. So, okay, let's put some women in the town. And you know what I mean? Just started to form a little bit more. So I had this idea for this town and this world, if you will, world building. And then when I started writing about it, I was like, this sounds a lot like an encyclopedia entry. Like, I'm describing everything that happens in this town, but I don't have anybody who's actually going through it. And that's when I had the idea for Sam. Like, I need someone to enter this world so we can learn about this world along with them. So, the parallel here, of course, is Harry Potter, where you could have started Harry Potter with book 2 and just spent the first 30 pages being like, here's how Hogwarts works.
Yeah.
But it's way more fun to be like, here's a kid who doesn't know anything, just like you, and let's go into this world together. And now we both know what the world's about. Here's the shortest book. You know what the world is, and here's the world now.
And now we're going to expand it from here, right?
play.
And that's what's up next, right, Max? You said you're planning about a 4-book series, give or take.
So yeah, originally it was going to be 3, and then I added this book on the front side. So yeah, a lot of outlining, a lot of writing. Now that summer's over, I finally have a second for my head to breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Did a lot of traveling, and like I mentioned to you, there were some births in our family, which was wonderful. So we did a lot of unexpected travel, but we're back on track now. So it's
Nice.
yeah. So hopefully I'll be by the new year. I should have a good rough draft, and then hopefully a couple months later I have something that's more finished that I can actually publish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And then since you set this in the in the 1920s, early 1900s, let's just say, did you have to do a lot of research for that?
I did a lot of research. I thought I knew a lot about that, but then as I got more detailed, I tried to be accurate with, like I mentioned before, like model, like where were engines at that point? I assumed that we had railroads. When did the Model T come in? I thought that was like the 19s or 1915. Like, had to go back and review a lot of that. I had a lot of fun actually, because they go through New York City on their travel. The book takes place kind of in 2 locations. It takes place in this town called Forge, which is upstate New York. There's literally a town called Old Forge, and that's where I put it. It's up north of Utica, another 70 miles.
Oh, yeah.
Nowhere. And then North South Carolina is the southern part. So John comes down to get the main character, Sam, and they travel north to this place. Well, they go through New York City on their way up. And so I did a bunch of research on New York City in the 1910s and 1920s, and that was really fun because I was like, would they take a subway? When was the subway built? And it turns out they called it Interborough Rapid Transit, which seems so modern. But if you look back, it's
it
like,
does,
no,
doesn't it?
So modern. But they had a subterranean subway. It came up. A lot of it was elevated. It wasn't in the subway yet. It was elevated trains. But it went all the way up to Queens. It went all the way up. Like, it was crazy what had already been established in New York City. I take a few liberties because I have them visiting some clubs and stuff. And the Savoy was a big jazz club in New York City. And I think I have it. The Savoy actually took place in like the 20s and 30s, and I have it in 1910. So I think I cheated at some of the timeline a little bit. But they're just so fun that you're like, how can I get this in here?
How can you not include it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh my God. And once again, because he's an African-American hero, and so is John when he comes down, of course, they're going to hang out in, the Harlem area of New York City, and that's where the Savoy was. So I'm like, well, I'm also paying homage to that part of history, which a lot of us know or don't know or are learning about through fiction and nonfiction both.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it's kind of great though that you're taking, you now give people an opportunity not only to be entertained and escape their own world and go into a new world and really, discover it with the character, right, with Sam. But you're also bringing in some of these cool historic things that people may have forgotten about and giving people an opportunity to learn as well.
Yeah, because the Savoy was a hoppin' place, That's where Lindy Hop, like a bunch of the dances came to pass, and where some of the best jazz was born. New York, just some amazing things that happened there. And you could easily write an encyclopedia just about that, but to just at least touch it a little bit in this book, I felt was at least honoring what had some of the journey that those of African descent have had in this country. So I felt that appropriate.
No, and that's great to throw that in there. And I think it, does it touch on the times being different? Does it make it more difficult for Sam in the 20s, compared to if he were to grow up now?
Yeah, I would say, I don't lean hard into the discrimination and prejudices of the day.
Disparity.
It's there for sure. Like, he and his father, to open the book, they work on a plantation, and there's some tension there for sure, and especially with our own knowledge, we know that there would be. The story I wanted to be about a rite of passage for Sam. I didn't want to ignore that, and it's present for sure, and it kind of comes to a head, and that it feeds into the tragedy, but it isn't that. It's not that story. I mean, even John, as they go north, they make a stop, and he's talking to one of his friends, and he's like, "You going to take the train from here?" And he said, "Yeah." And he says, "At least, he says, someday we'll be sitting up front, and his friend says, "Someday," so they just go to the back of the train. It's like we acknowledge what the times are without having to dig too deep. The other
or exploiting it or
Yeah,
things like that.
exactly.
Yeah,
Right. You don't want to
exactly.
be like, oh, a white guy writing for a,
Exactly.
I don't want to be
Here's
that at all.
another white dude talking
Yeah,
about,
oh, man, it's not what I'm trying to do. But
no.
the movie that did it really, really well as well was The Boys in the Boat. Did you see that movie?
I did not see that one, huh?
No, check it out if you get a chance. It's about a rowing team that took the Olympics in same thing, 1920s or 30s, 40s, and up in there from Seattle. So of course it's an all white team. That's just the nature of it. But when they go to the Olympics, it's he held the fist up there in Germany that year.
Oh, is that Carl
Owens.
Lewis?
No, Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, so he's literally, as they're going to walk out at the Olympics, he's behind them, and they have a quick exchange, and he's like, they're like, yeah, you show that to Hitler, what it's about. He's like, I'm here to show the boys at home. He's like, oh, yeah. So, they're told this story because accurately from historical perspective, it was a white crew. It just, that's the way it happened up in the Washington state at that time. But they do take a moment to say, this is also happening in the world. And back to our story, which is kind of what I was
just acknowledging it and realizing that it's there, but still not making it the whole story.
Correct. Because yes, this is happening. We acknowledge it. And this is the story that we're telling, which I think is the best way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't want to just fluff it off like it never happened.
Correct.
But acknowledging it and then moving forward with that, it sets the tone to help people understand that, it's different back then than it would be today. Yeah. But we're not going to harp on it.
Correct. And we could write books that do, and
sure.
We should.
And there's plenty out there that,
correct.
And we should, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but that's the license that I took with that part of history, if you will, is to acknowledge it and then, move through it. And I'm sure it'll come up still. I actually have a couple scenes that are super fun that are coming where, that same kind of thing happens, but we get to kick some ass with it a little bit, which is
nice.
Really, really fun.
Yeah. All right. So, Max, I have a little segment that I like to do, and I'm just going to switch it up right here a little bit. This is just for our listeners to get to know you a little bit. So I call it Dude Q&A. I'm just going to some rapid fire dumb questions just to get to know you. So give you an example. Yeah. Werewolf or witch? Which would you rather be?
A werewolf. Yeah. Yeah. Especially according to how this rolls in my book. Yeah. Yeah. Although Merlin was pretty cool. You could make a case for Merlin for sure.
Yeah. Now, because your book's called Moonshine, I got to ask you this.
Yes.
Have you ever had moonshine? And if you do, real or did you prefer real or imaginary?
Yeah, well, yeah. This is less of a rapid fire question, but because I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Maine, our family happened to grow up on, we had a lot of acreage, and there happened to be like wild apples that grew on the stone walls on our property. So we made easy 30, 40 gallons of apple cider every year. And one year my dad got the idea, is like, we should make some hard cider. So moonshine, no, but I've had a very good taste, or 3 or 4, several of hard cider.
Hard cider?
From literally the dirt basement underneath our farmhouse. Like, okay, I guess it's April. Let's go see if that's ready. And it didn't matter if it was ready. We just started drinking. And you learn at 16 how fun, hard cider can be.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, all right. So next one, if Sam's facing a bear in the woods, what's he going to do?
He'll run until he can't, and then he'll stand and fight. One of the great things about this book, the very first chapter is great. It just takes up a page and a half. It's a great first chapter. And same kind of thing. He gets cornered and he just takes a breath and he turns and puts his fist up. It's like, he's not out there trying to be brave, but when it needs to happen, he'll get it done.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. When you're writing, do you listen to music at all?
Ooh, yes, but I can't have lyrics. I listen to
so like instrumental.
Yeah, instrumental, but kind of like a chill hop thing. If I listen to classical, it might put me to sleep, or
put you to sleep. Yep, been there.
Yeah, exactly. But something lo-fi, I don't know if you know Chilled Cow or Lo-Fi Girl, that kind of stuff. I listen to a lot of that as I write, just because there's enough of a beat to kind of keep me up a little bit.
But keep the rhythm going. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I listen to lyrics, I start picturing the lyrics and writing toward them.
See, that's the way I would be too, because I was thinking when I wrote this question, I was like, dude, is he going to really listen? But some people do, because I realize like for me, if I'm reading or writing something, I really can't be listening, because next thing I know, I'm writing the lyrics,
Yeah.
It's like just gets into your mind. But it's nice.
Right.
Instrumental is great because at least can keep you, upbeat and have a good thing, but you're not focusing on those words. So yeah. If you could time travel to Sam's world, what's the first thing you'd do?
Into Sam's world? Wow. Yeah, I'd find a witch. I'd be like, yeah. The world he's coming into is a, like I said, a magical world. Witches and werewolves, they kind of have a
Yeah.
thing going, and yeah, I'd find a witch immediately and see what the deal is and what spells are ready. We'll put it that way. Yeah,
Nice.
that's a good one.
All right. When you're writing, do you like to be like a complete quiet, a nice secluded area, or does it bother you? Do you like to have your family around?
No, I am very prone to distraction. I don't know if I have ADD or whatever, but I'm for sure prone to distraction. So not only do I need like kind of my own space a little bit, but I need to know that there's nothing on the calendar for the next
Yeah.
longer than I'm going to write, probably, because if there's anything impending, my brain
It's just
just
going to weigh on you, isn't it? Yeah.
it's annoying as hell. So annoying. I actually, in a way, found more when I was writing, like I said earlier, I was writing to like a certain amount of words per day, like 2,000 words a day was like my goal. And I found actually as much success writing in these super small chunks. I like leave to pick up my son from his drum lesson early by like 15 minutes, and I would write for 15 minutes, and that's good for a couple hundred words. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's better, because I could just kind of revamp this one piece,
Yeah.
as opposed to, it does seem intimidating a little bit sometimes to sit down and be like, okay, 2,000 words, go.
Yeah, right. Because then you're probably counting too, like, okay, that was at least 5, right?
But if I can get up early and kind of before the sun comes up, just sit and just off gas and write 500, then I'm like, oh, that took a half an hour. And it's like I'm ahead of the game now. Okay, cool. I can, I got a little momentum going.
A little breather, right? A little breather room. Yeah.
Yeah. If the family's around, it's really tough. Really tough. I mean, the kids are older now. They're all teenagers, and I got one in college. So it's not as bad as it used to be. But anybody who's got young kids, I don't have to convince you at all that, when my wife and I, the first time we went on vacation without the kids, it was like, what? No one's interrupting
Did you
us.
feel lost?
Like, yeah. Well, the fact is just like no one's interrupting you like every 4 freaking minutes. You're just like, what is this like to have my own thoughts for a second? It was crazy.
Yeah. But what's it been like for you? Because I want to talk about this, because you are a family man, obviously. But,
Yeah.
give us, and this is not you did great on the Dude Q&A, by the way, but this is just another
Thanks.
question I wanted to ask,
Sure.
because I think it's important to talk to people, especially, with men these days that are fathers, because, we talked about people that grow up without fathers, or,
Yeah.
whatever the family situation's been. But, obviously you're a dad. So how has that
Yeah.
shaped your life?
Shaped my life in a huge. Do you have kids? I didn't catch that. Sorry.
I don't have kids. No,
Okay, cool.
unfortunately.
It's okay. It's a lot of us want them, don't get them. Some of us don't want them
Yep.
and got them.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of ways that rolls out. But yeah, being a dad, especially a new dad, is it's doing life on hard mode. It really is, in the most wonderful way. In that you think you know what sleep deprivation is because you partied a couple nights with your friends, and that's not the case at all. You think you know what it is, but it's not. You think you know what being uncomfortable is, with everything that has to happen in a day, or your kid is sick and you can't do anything, and what do you do? And the doctor said, yeah, you just got to wait it out. They're going to break their fever. You're like, But that being said, one of the most important things, which I think goes for everyone, you can think back to when you were a kid. What did you want? You wanted, hey, watch this,
Yep.
So most of the time for kids, it's just about being a witness, legit, for them growing up. That's why they come in here. And my wife made a really interesting point just the other day. We were talking that, with kids, the love you get from kids is all paid up front. What I mean by that is, when they're teenagers, you want to throw them out a window. But when they're little, they, we've all heard the story about the girl who, had to give blood to help her sister. And she thought that by giving her blood, she was going to die. So she asked her parents if she's giving her blood, like, okay, when do I die? They're like, oh no, honey, you're just giving blood. That's how kids are. They're like, okay.
Yeah. Innocent. Yeah.
So innocent, so they have that much love for you for the first 6, 7, 8, 10 years or so. So they pay this huge deposit of love in the first decade. And then toward the end of the second decade, you're like, oh yeah, okay, you already loved me all you're going to love me. Like, now you need to hate me a little bit to get.
So you have to channel that earlier love, so you don't kill them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And also, like, my wife and I took a lot of courses. Luckily, she's in education, so she understands a lot about childhood development that I learned along the way. And one of the big things that we kind of tell new parents and even friends of ours is, if you can, to choose connection first. Is that usually if a kid's going sideways or something's going on, it's because they feel disconnected in some way. So A lot of times you
That's
skip down
that's a
to the
great
level.
that's a great I mean, that's a great point because just sitting there thinking about that, I mean, yeah, 100%.
It works with husbands and wives too, you know? It's like
Yeah.
someone's throwing a fit, this or that. You're like, whoa, hold on. Let's just, okay, hold on. Wait a second. Let's just connect here. Okay, now that I'm with you, good. Now you're more calm. And I'm not saying we fix the issue. Now we can fix the issue because we're not freaking out anymore.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
for kids,
Take a moment.
yeah, for kids, 90% of the time, they need a hug 90% of the time. And then once they can, then they're like, okay, now what's up, you know? Also, I think that, you don't want to be kid centric in your life and that like they rule everything. But
Yeah.
at the same time, for sure, there is a sensitivity wave there where it's like your kid just yawned off to bed. Like, guess what? I know it's only 8:30, but we're going to bed. You just, and you don't have to announce it. You're just like, oh, yeah, well, let's go brush our teeth. Let's go do that. Yeah, let's go upstairs and do that. As opposed to, oh, they yawn, they're tired. Okay, let me finish these 4 things. Like, nope. Now you missed it. Now they're overtired. Now you got a whole other thing that's happening. So, kids are a wonderful, 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 wonderful. They bring meaning to your life for sure. But man, it does put your life on hard mode, and it does call into you as a man, as a father, to be all kinds of things you didn't anticipate. It asks you to be patient like you've never had patience before. It asks you to be
Well, I'm
present.
sure. I know it caused my parents, to lose their mind a time or two.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and your parents laugh too because they get karma back. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
you got it now.
Yeah, they did with my brother and my niece, they're like, "Oh, remember when you did this?"
Yeah, love it. There's nothing better as a parent. But yeah, but if you can be present with your kids, like really, really present, like that's the biggest gift you can continuously give them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you said because that was gonna be my next question is what would you give, what advice would you give to other dads out there? And I think that right there probably sums it up, right? Be present.
Yeah, be present. And that can be really tricky because, especially as dads, we're worried about like next paycheck. We're worried about like, I just lost my job, AI, whatever. We're worried about 1,000 other things. But,
Exactly.
that little guy, he's not, he just wants to throw a ball, and just
He
throw
just
the
wants
ball.
your time. He doesn't
That's it.
want your money. He doesn't want, any of your things. He just wants your time. That's it.
That's it.
Or she.
That's it. Yeah,
Yep.
or she. That's all they want. They literally, the best thing they want is just sit on your lap and read a book. That's all I need to do. It's so simple in some ways, but it's profound in others. They get that. Kids get that they don't know it consciously, but intuitively they know they have a limited time here. So they want that time with you. So if you can receive that and give it back to them, it can be wonderfully magical.
Yeah, that's amazing advice too. And even though I'm not a dad, that's something I think all of us can live by too. Even if it's just being married, like with my wife, being present there too.
Totally.
How many times do we, especially as, I think men are probably more prone to do it. We put a lot into our work or, things like that drag us away from the family. And, I'm hopeful now that there's folks like you, saying, hey, you got to be present, be there with them. And hopefully people are realizing now, don't chase that almighty buck because listen, you're always going to be chasing it.
Yep.
Take that. You only got so much time with your kids, so make sure you spend it wisely.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, it's kind of the joke with COVID, right? It was like there was quality time and there's quantity time.
Yeah.
People were like, enough of this quantity time. I like my quality time once a week better,
Exactly. I can imagine, being stuck in the house with all the kids and nobody's going to school. You're not going to work,
Crazy. But the thing about that too is that you don't, with kids as well, and sometimes with your spouse or with friends, oftentimes you don't know what the special moments are. Like you think you're planning this huge Thanksgiving dinner and everyone's going to have a great time and da-da-da. But, what your kid really liked was 3 days before when you made the pie together. That's what they remember. They don't remember all the chaos of their cousins and this and that. They remember this one little thing, or they remember when you helped them with their homework. It's the magic of the mundane, I think.
Yeah, those small, intimate moments.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, they can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. That's the other thing about having kids too, is you get to see the world new again. You get to be like, oh, that's the first time they're seeing a flower. Oh, well, look at their eyes. Like, oh my God. You get to do that things.
You get the amazement.
Yeah, if you're present, you get to go through that again. Yeah.
Man, Max, this has been awesome, and I know we're getting close to an hour, and I want to be cognizant of your time. But
it's all good, man. It's all good.
this is, I wanted to talk about your dad, you being a dad, because I love sharing stories. I really want to encourage other fathers out there to be present fathers, like you said, and just be a part of their kids' lives. Not saying that all dads are deadbeats, we're not all of us are deadbeats, but, realize that, your kids are there, and, you need to spend time with them. But I also like the fact that, you took your creative side and took a bad thing of COVID, right? And finally put your words down on paper. And now we've got Moonshine. And so what's next for you and Moonshine? Because, when can the readers or the listeners expect the next book?
Yeah, man, I wish I could make a promise like that. Not as long as Game of Thrones, we'll put it that way. I have a little less patience than that. But I'm hoping in the next year, like I said, year and a half, I think 2 years is a pretty good spread for me and how much I have going on. Maybe as the kids start going to college more, I can shorten it up. And but I think hopefully, maybe not this December, but maybe middle of the summer or next December, like 2020. I guess that would be 2020, December 2026. Hopefully, we'll have something.
Nice.
I'm trying to get it done a little bit because I'm finding out in the publishing world that people like a series. So, and some people won't even start a book until they know the series is done.
There's another one. Yep, exactly. And it's funny. I've heard that I've had publishers on the show and stuff that are sharing their secrets, and they've said the same thing. That it's like usually people, until they know you have a couple of books, won't even read the first one.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of
and then finding out, how they, if you sell 5,000 books, you're a success, a huge success. When I heard that number, I was like, wait, only 5,000? Because it seems small, right?
It does.
But it's not.
No.
If you hit 5,000 people, that's pretty good.
Yeah, you're pretty damn good for sure. So that lit a fire on me when I found that out too, that series is a big deal. So I'm like, all right, well, I got to get on the next one then, and then get on the next one. Actually, so much so that I've kind of backed off my marketing a little bit. I love doing these podcasts. I feel like I get the gift for gab. So it's the easiest piece of marketing you can do. But I'm like, well, why am I going to go out and market this book if I really need the series to at least have 2 books or maybe 3 before people are going to really dive in? So maybe I should save that money, save that time, and be working on the book instead, which I'm sure you can appreciate. So
yeah. I can. I definitely can. But yeah, Max, again, this has been awesome. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know about, or, especially, well, let's do this. Where can they go to find your book?
Sure, absolutely. Everything about the book is under readmoonshine.com. So Moonshine, of course, you can imagine was taken. It's not a book.
Yeah.
So Read Moonshine is my website, readmoonshine.com. And I can be found at that same Read Moonshine on YouTube, I don't think I'm on Twitter. I think I'm on Blue Sky and Instagram and all the things. I think you might even have a TikTok that I'm posting that on. If you're an audiobook person, the book is on Audible already. I read it myself. I also have it on YouTube that I literally just opened it up and read it myself on YouTube. So if you want to listen, you can listen that way as well. I want to get the book out to as many people as possible so they can be looking forward to the next book. So, you can look up Max Shippee if you want, but Read Moonshine has everything. If you go to that website or find me on social media, it'll point you in the right direction for all.
Yeah, so readmoonshine.com, and it's Read Moonshine is all one word, so all the listeners know out there. And I will post it on the screen so they can see it for those that watch. But also you can go to justadudepodcast.com, because I'm going to have a guest page for Max there as well. Yay! All your links are going to be there, all your social links. So, they'll be able to find it either way. Either way they go, they'll get to the book. So, but again, Max, thank you so much for spending this time. I know it took us a little bit to get hooked up, but, I'm glad that we recorded this now, and when this releases, we'll be getting closer to that second book.
Yeah.
So, that's going to be a nice thing. Hopefully we'll be, no pressure, but no, there's no guarantees, right? Writing is a process. We can't put, you can't put a time on a priceless memory of a book, right? So it's got to come naturally. So it will come. Max has assured us there's going to be at least 4, but just give him a little time to work on it. He's a dad. He's got a lot of stuff going on.
That's cool, people. Magic doesn't happen by itself. You got to give it a second.
That's right. But no, Max, that's all I have. Is there anything, I want to give you one last opportunity. Anything else you want to share with the audience before we go?
I know. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Nathan. It's been super, super fun. Great podcast host. And I've had a lot of fun conversations, really easy. And just the last little thing is just to, appreciate all the stories in your life, whether they're your personal stories, however they're coming at you, movies, whatever. And just, take a second to be present, I guess. We kind of left on that with the dad thing, but, just be present, listen to the stories that are already coming. And if you get a chance or you want to read a good one, there it is right back there.
There it is, Moonshine right behind him. Well, Max, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Well, Max, thanks for hanging out, man. Listeners, go check out Moonshine. It's got heart, grit, and some serious magic. Hit up readmoonshine.com for the goods. Well, that's it for Just a Dude podcast. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and leave a review. Stay chill, stay curious, and maybe don't mess with werewolves. I'm Nathan, and I'll see you on the next episode.